and welcome to Kate Anjou's Book Reviews, the place where we shine a light on indie books and their authors. Today I am going to be reviewing All the Parts of the Soul by Catherine Ferns. And the interview is also available now if you would like to take a listen. So this book is set during the 1500s in the Reformation, during the height of the witch trials in Geneva, Switzerland. This whole book is about the witch trials, the notion of plague spreading, which, if you've not heard of that before, is this concept that people were purposely spreading a plague and illness by draping like limbs and viscera over people's door handles in order to spread germs and disease. It's never really been proven as to whether that was actually happening or whether it was just a bit of an hysteria based rumor. Also as well, the importance of the changes in the church around that time. So there was a lot of Calvinism. So there's a figurehead in the church called John Calvin, and he was bringing forth this concept of essentially the Protestant church, where it stated that the Catholic Church and a lot of their sort of belief structures or their practices were not correct in accordance with the Bible, and that all kind of fed into this fear of the common folk because they were having their whole lives upheaved in so many different ways. And this is the whole backdrop to our main character, Henry Aubert, who is a magistrate during the time and an associate of John Calvin, and he's sent by John Calvin to this little village in Geneva called Cetinny. Yes, Cetinny. Basically, the whole atmosphere of this book is one of suspicion, of anxiety, of like the rumor mill, and not being able to trust your neighbor, not being able to know whether you can confide in them about anything should your words be twisted or misconstrued. It's a real time in history. It happened. These are, for the most part, real people. The only two characters that weren't really that weren't sort of specifically real characters as our main character, Henry Aubert, and our female lead, Louise de Penny. And but even then, they were based on real people that existed back then. And so when you're reading this book, you have this real sense of there's no disassociation. We have this knowledge of things that happened back then throughout Europe and America as well, in Salem, Massachusetts, of what happened to these women and some men. And we know it's awful and we know it's abhorrent, but it happened so long ago and it doesn't really happen now, and whatever, you can disassociate. Whereas when you read this book, you are really drawn in, and the knowledge that this happened, that these people are real people, and these types of conversations happened, and these types of events really occurred, these events in this book, it makes it very difficult to disassociate. And it evokes so much emotion, and it's truly brilliant the way that happens, and the setting is just as much of a character as anything else in this story, because it completely sets up the atmosphere, the mindset, and the complete unsettled atmosphere of this town and this city and country. It's done so well. And also as well, to add that, this doesn't really happen now, but actually people are still being accused of things, and there is still very much an archaic mindset lately, especially when it comes to women's rights and things. So, I don't want anyone to hear that and think that I'm ignoring those things. I'm not. We just don't specifically have like witch trials in that way anymore. That's what I meant. So I've mentioned the characters. I've mentioned two main characters in Henry Aubert, a magistrate, and Louise de Penny, who is a local wise woman. She's a midwife. She's essentially a doctor in all but title. She's been educated as such. You know, she is of faith, but she has had, without going into it, I don't want to give away too much, but she has had a history of difficulties in her life with regards to religion and things. And we have these wild array of characters, and I say characters, I mean it purely because of in the book context, but as I said before, for the most part, these are real people that did live, and these are the things that you know, did occur. And if you've listened to the interview or are about to listen to the interview, then you will hear about how Catherine Ferns, the author, who lives in Geneva, she had access to all of these manuscripts and documents and things that detailed exactly how these people spoke and exactly the types of things that they said, and she used that to great effect here. So characters like John Calvin was a real person. The mindset that he has with regards to Catholicism were real, was real. The way that he had an insane influence on Geneva and that surrounding area with regards to sort of a new faith in a way, a new way of practicing, a new way of displaying certain I suppose rituals, for lack of a better term, within Christianity, and you know, sort of eradicating a lot of the Catholicism ways. His influence was insurmountable. Everyone followed him, and you know, he doesn't come into this story lots and lots, but because we're following Henry's perspective on this, he references him a lot, and we really get an idea of who this character is and the type of power that he holds, and his awareness of that. And, you know, for all of the things that he says, the reasons that he does these things for and makes these decisions for, Calvin was very astute and he was very power driven, and personally I feel like he just did it all for his own gain, and we see glimpses of that here. In regards to Henry Aubert, our main character, he has a whole world of psychology to unravel, and we are given quite a lot of it, and it's really important that we have that, because the things that he does and the ideas that he holds are really deplorable, and being that we are in his head for the whole duration of this book, it's really important that we see why he is the way that he is, where he comes from, where his roots are, because if we just had this character from anyone else's perspective, he would be the villain of the piece through and through. As it is, we have his mindset, we have his memories, we have his thoughts on things, and how he gets to these conclusions, and there's a real kind of like understanding of how he gets from A to B to C, and that's so important, because otherwise I think that this book, it would just be almost unreadable, because we're having to deal with all these awful things that transpired and transpire in the book, and then also not being able to at least understand our main character, whose perspective we're seeing these things unravel through. It has to be that way, and this book, not once does it condone the actions, and in fact there's all these other characters, including Louise, who counter what Henry does and tries to get him to see reason in things, and again he goes through, he's not just a black and white type of character, he himself goes through, but what ifs, or maybe it's this, or am I really in the wrong, but no, I can't be in the wrong because this, and you know, his rationale for for the things that he does and the beliefs that he has. Whilst I don't agree with them, or while I can't relate to them, I can understand them for a man of his stature, his history, and his time. I think that that is such a huge feat to have achieved by any writer, let alone like a female writer who, you know, doesn't have a male perspective, you know, and isn't from back then, and, you know, and all these things, but she is a historian and so does have a great knowledge of these things. And then, as you'll hear in the interview, she did lots of research, but I just think that being able to capture the essence of this character and still make him sympathetic at times, infuriating at times, I think is just all an absolute credit to Catherine, for sure. Then we have Louise de Penny, who, as I said before, is this wise woman. She's pretty much a doctor, and she is sympathetic towards Henry, despite the evil that he displays and that she has to quite literally clean up. And her patience with him and her effort with him to try and get him to think about what he's doing and see reason within the context of what's happening, is truly remarkable. And, you know, she has everything to lose by doing this, by getting sort of close with this man, especially in the way that she's so progressive with her practices. You know, she uses very controversial mentors and books, you know, controversial for the time, that, you know, were encouraging things like the early stages of inoculation, like vaccines and things, especially during the time where plague spreading was such a fear. You know, and she's quite open about that. She is very open about her thoughts on female anatomy and the way that females work, and, you know, what rights we should have with things like childbirth and just general like lifestyle. Like, she's a very progressive, very forward-thinking character, and I think, you know, one of the most relatable characters in the story. And she uses herbs, and she uses roots and different natural sources for her remedies, and she reads, and which is almost unheard of for a woman at that time, and she's very educated. It's very brave of her, for someone like her, for a woman like her, to at times face off against a man who is so resolute in his beliefs, or at least appears to be so resolute in his beliefs. And she really is a truly brave and wonderful character to read, and she's the type of person which I just feel like we could all be a little bit more like Louise de Penny, you know. And then we have a character called Donzel, who it is stated, but it's stated in French, so but he seems to be like a mayor, or like very much a leader in the community. Like, he makes a lot of the decisions and things, and he's always at the like official events, and he holds a lot of weight, and he is a very outlandish character. He's very crude, he's very misogynistic, he's very loud and brash, and he is one of the few characters that afford us some humor, but equally he also, a lot of the times that I want to hurl this book across the room is for things that he says or does. And as I said in the interview, all in the best way. I want to hurl this book in the best way possible. It's not like, oh, rubbish. It's just like, oh. And yeah, this character is one where it's just like, you can understand Henry's frustration with him and not knowing how to deal with him. He kind of does. There's someone in your life who is like Donzel. I don't necessarily mean in his mindset of misogyny or anything like that, but just in his mannerisms, the way that he comes to, you know, he's the type of guy who slaps you too hard on the back and you kind of, you know, and like he, you know, who says the wrong thing at the wrong time, or, you know, will you know, if you were out on a night out, he would like, you know, say something really loudly to kind of embarrass you. Like he's that sort of guy, but he's also kind of a bit oblivious to the way that he is. He thinks that, you know, he's perfectly fine. And what's wrong with you? Why are you being so prudish? You know, whatever. Why are you being so, you know, things like that. So he's a very interesting character. But yeah, and then he goes and spoils it all by saying something stupid like women belong in the kitchen. So the real dark side to this book is the brutality demonstrated. As I said, this book is based on things that really, really happened. The torture strategies, the burning of the feet, the hoisting of like your arms behind you so it dislocates your shoulder. I can't remember the terminology for that. Like the, it begins with an S, I can't remember. But yeah, that, and just the humiliation that is put upon these people, the shaving of their entire body everywhere, and being essentially stabbed with these needles at certain points to see whether you cry and feel pain. If you cry, then you're not, you know, you're not guilty. But if you do cry though, then oh no, that's just the devil's ruse. That's just what they want you to think. And so you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And you have to endure all of this torture in the meantime. And whatever you do, you're wrong. Whatever you do, you're a witch. Whatever you do, you have copulated with the devil. And you know, it's so maddening and completely illogical. And this isn't a fantasy story. It's not. This is not a fantasy story. This is a story of things that happened truly. This is based in such realism. It can choke you. And it's hard to read because of that. I read a lot of horror, but something about this book, I don't know whether it was because it's from a first person narrative, or whether it's because, you know, I'm pretty spiritual and things myself and I can relate to these women, and I would have definitely been the first to be accused of witchcraft. There is just no way that I would have come out unscathed or even alive. And I think that is the same for most women nowadays. And these women are made to feel shame for perfectly natural things, for perfectly reasonable things and wants and desires, but they're shunned for it because they're women. And Catherine does a really fantastic job of conveying that, conveying the horrors. It doesn't shy away. No one is safe in this book, because no one was safe in real life. And if you're going to read this book, which I very, very much suggest that you do, I think this book is a very important book. I would just prepare yourself for that, because this book will make you feel more than you're probably expecting. So themes. So I've mentioned a lot of them, obviously, witchcraft and women's rights, plague spreading, misogyny, religion. And, you know, it's so funny because, I mean, not funny, haha, but, you know, it's such a coincidence that so many of these things are so relevant right now. We've just come through a pandemic. There is always an air of, you know, COVID, you know, fears. And is there going to be a new strain? And should we trust the vaccines? And, you know, are they trying to put something in our medication, or, you know, are they, you know, or like people are fighting over whether people should be vaccinated or not. People are so aware now of germs and the spread of germs, and, you know, people are still wearing masks even though we don't need to anymore, you know, as per the government regulations. People are still being very, very careful about hand washing. You know, 5 years ago, you know, I mean, I know people who probably didn't even wash their hands after going to the bathroom, and now everyone's like, happy birthday, you know. And I don't know whether people sing that anymore, but like, you know, I'm definitely am very conscious about how I'm washing my hands, and although I always did wash them after I went to the bathroom, just to hasten to add, but you know, there's that fear, that paranoia almost, and whether or not it's justified, it's still in the air. And it's you know, it's funny how we have those parallels between back then and now. Misogyny, unfortunately, is still very much a thing. Sure, we're not putting people on trial for witchcraft, but there are awful laws being passed in supposedly progressive countries, or supposedly, you know, intelligent countries, that just make absolutely no sense and are spitting in the face of women's rights. And you know, you have other countries where you're still executed for your sexuality, and these things that are just actual insanity. And so you can read this book and be like, oh well, that was ages ago, but actually, really, was it? Is it still ages ago? That it might not be as blatant as this, but these mindsets are still very prevalent and current, and possibly this is why I was so affected by this book. We also have, we have the theme of religion, and when is religion not a debate? You know, and the idea of, you know, old ways and new ways, and, you know, how important is religion, and how much does religion spur on our motives, our mindsets, and this, I'm not anti-religious. I want to hasten, I'm not anti-religious. I think having faith is a wonderful thing. I think it can be so important for hope and for comfort and for guidance. But what I'm talking about is when religion is twisted and taken out of context and used to spread hate and utilized as a business. And this very much is what happens in this book, you know, and that again is still stuff that happens now, you know, like the church don't pay tax, religion being used to spread hate against, you know, gay people, or, you know, supporting things like transphobia, or, you know, or even just hate against other religions. And it's just, it's infuriating. It's just so mental to me. And yeah, and this book delves into all of that, and it doesn't do it without preaching. Sorry, no, it does it without preaching. Sorry, it doesn't, you know, force you to look at one thing or other. It very much looks at both sides of the coin. It very much gives one argument and then another, and then, but you know, and I suppose depending on the type of person you are, you'll have very different takes from this book and very different responses to this book. But as someone who is a liberal woman, who is very spiritual, it evokes a lot in me, and there's a lot of things that I very much care about in this book. And this book, the people and the characters in this book are very conflicting with my own belief structure and what I believe is moral and good and ethical. And it seems that has been also the general response for reviews and things so far. This book has been out since October, so it's not a very old book at all. And yeah, the response so far seems to be kind of in line with me. So I'm hoping that you know, anyone else who reads this book gets as much from it as I did, and you know, feels as sort of enthusiastic and things as I do, because that is what a book like this should be doing. It's important. It should be evoking these responses. So yeah, I hope that it does for you. So that was my review of All the Parts of the Soul. Fantastic book. Please, please, please go check it out. It's such an important read, and I feel like this is something that everyone should read. As I said, it pertains to so much that is going on nowadays, that it's impossible for you to not get something from it. But I hope that you enjoyed this review. I hope that you enjoyed the interview if you've watched or listened. Catherine is so wonderful. It was such a joy having her on, and yeah, her book is out now. That is All Parts of the Soul. I'll get that. There you go. That's what it looks like. It's a beautiful cover. Love it. So yeah, so All the Parts of the Souls. And, oh, you on balance? Yeah. So that is available, as I said, is out now. You can get that on Quill and Crow Publishing House, on their website, through the Crow Shop. Links will be in my link tree and also in the blurb. So yeah, and I believe it is also available on Amazon. So, you know, if that's a bit easier for you, then it is available there also. So yeah. Go buy it. Go buy. But thank you very much for tuning in, listening. Yeah, if you want to check out my social medias, I can be found on TikTok and Instagram under kate.anjous.book.reviews, or on Facebook under Kate Anjous Book Reviews. If you're listening, there is the YouTube channel, which again is just Kate Anjous Book Reviews. Please go check it out, and you'll be actually be able to see my reviews in the flesh, and also my interviews. You'll be able to see the lovely authors that I have on. And you can also email me at kateanjousbookreviews@outlook.com. Please like, subscribe, follow wherever you are listening, watching, interacting. It really, really helps me out. And it would be great to interact with you on the socials. There's, you know, it's not just episode links and such. There's real content there. I'm constantly updating stories with book content. There's announcements, there's all kinds of things. Speaking of announcements, my next guest for March is the fantastic author Siren Farengray. We are discussing their book Love Like Gilded Bones, which is a dark fantasy, very dark. So I'm very excited to be chatting with them. And so I hope you tune in for that. I have been promoting their work on my social media a fair bit, especially Instagram. I am a full supporter of their work. I think there are no other books that are quite like theirs. So I really hope that you enjoy that also. So and that one actually is also available now through Amazon. So yeah, get your hooks into it, because that'll be coming out about mid-March. So you've got a couple of weeks to buy it and read it if you want, before the interview and that comes out. But otherwise, yeah, that's basically it. Thank you very much as ever for tuning in, and I can't wait till next time. Yeah, speak to you later. Bye.